Hello everybody, this is Chaos from KaosKinWalkthroughs, and you're watching The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword, released in 2011, is Nintendo's latest installment in their acclaimed Legend of Zelda series, a fact that, without my commentary, you would have never learned. The game has been met with an obscene amount of critical acclaim and fan backlash, so this is a bit of a dividing game when it comes to the fan base, but nonetheless, I'm here to walk you through this game as best as I can. So, waiting on the title screen for about 30 seconds, we'll play an intro. This intro isn't necessarily vital to the game, but it's worth watching because it does fill in a lot of backstory. Riveting. Truly riveting. So that said, now that we have all that information down, you're going to want to start your first file. I'm just going to keep my name as Link because I'm boring, and after that, let's begin the game. And so now we are in control of our valiant character, champion of nothing and hero of all jack shit, Link. Yeah, just because he's the hero doesn't mean that he's the hero yet, if you know what I'm saying. First of all, you're going to want to go over to this drawer right here, and you'll get yourself a blue rupee, a cool 5 rupees to start the game off. And unlike Twilight Princess, they don't remind you of it every single time you get one. Yes! Now, the controls for this one are a bit different from most Zelda games, for several reasons, but one of the things that has stayed is the Z targeting system, which is the only way to control the camera. Z targeting will basically put the camera directly behind you so that you have a better vantage point. The only other one is the A button, which will do things like sprints, which I'll get to in a second. Now, if you also want to learn a bit more about the game and environment, you can talk to this guy in the golden hat. He's actually dressed like Link normally would be, but in gold. So, you know, that fan character that you invented is actually canon. Who would have thought? Anyway, this is Pippet. He's basically a senior class person at the Skyloft Night Academy. And he's actually telling you about your Crimson Loftwing, because of course, if we're the main character, we have to have the most interesting ride in the game. You can actually ask him a few things about bird handling and stuff, but mostly all he's gonna really do is tell you where to go. Also, over here we have Instructor Horwell. Instructor Horwell is basically the teacher at the academy, and also kind of a science freak. We'll learn a bit more about him later on, but essentially he's the one who's going to teach you how to fly around in the game. I mean, he's already taught you, sort of. Technically, you're just, like, gonna learn through a tutorial, but nonetheless, he's basically the, wing instructor, if you will. He actually teaches you how to go into first-person mode, which is done very differently in this game. Since the up on the D-pad doesn't really work on the Wii Remote, you actually press C, and you have full vantage while looking around in first person, as well as the ability to move around, which is kind of nice, but you really won't see a time when you're supposed to use it very often. Now, if you hold the A button, you can actually sprint around, and when you're outside, I literally mean sprint around. Also, shaking the nunchuck will allow you to roll, though you're not supposed to know right now, so don't tell anybody I told you that. Now if we go over here and talk to this effeminate-looking human Pikachu, you'll meet Fledge, which is actually a pun on the term fledgling. If you haven't gotten it quite yet, everyone's name is birds' names. It's also very clever and detestably punny. Anyway, Fledge basically tells you that he wasn't good enough to fly in the race, so now he's got to sit here and carry barrels, except he kind of sucks at that too. In fact, now that I think about it, he kind of looks like Kenneth Parcell. A terrible at his job, Kenneth Parcell. So you can actually lift this first barrel over for him, and he'll basically give you a tutorial on carrying stuff. It's done very differently in this game, as you now have the ability to throw and roll things as well. Both of these are done with the Wii Remote. Essentially, once you're carrying something, you just use the analog stick to carry it around. But if you're holding the Wii Remote directly up and then flick it, you can throw something. Or if you hold it down, you can roll it like a bowling ball. You won't be able to do a whole lot with this. I mean, technically you can throw and roll this, but you're not supposed to. And you do get a reward for doing this properly, so I'd actually recommend you go ahead and do it. It's not a really big reward, but a reward is still a reward, especially for something this early in the game. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to carry it as best as possible. Now, as you can see, I brought down this drop-down menu. You can do that by pressing the 2 button on the Wii Remote, which will basically change during anything. It's context sensitive, if I want to go by the words of Birdie from Conker's Bad Fur Day. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that you can actually carry this all the way across the kitchen without your stamina meter draining. And I'd recommend you practice this because you're going to find that you're going to need to conserve your stamina meter all the time, and getting familiar with how long it takes for certain actions and objects to drain the stamina meter can really be helpful later on, especially so that you don't get really annoyed with some of the controls of this game. Occasionally you're going to find that you're running around all like a Jump Man and a Sonic Man, and then you're going to suddenly slow down and it's going to kill the pace of the gameplay, and you're going to be very upset. This lunch lady over here, I actually talked to her to see if she said anything different. Turns out she doesn't. So, I believe that she is a robot. So, you know, don't trust her. Behind those cold mechanical eyes are even more cold mechanical robot eyes. Also, once you've done this, don't forget to talk to Fledge, as they'll actually give you a good 20 rupees. I'm not going to be getting everything in the game, because obviously this game is decently recent, and I don't know anyone who's actually obtained every single treasure chest, every single rupee, every single secret conversation in the game. I'm only going to show as much as I do know exists, and also anything that I can find from information from walkthroughs. So hopefully that'll be sufficient enough for you. Now, when you go outside, we are going to have to deal with the most feared enemy in all of gaming. Force tutorials. So, it's time to go all Solid Snake on our asses and try and sneak away from him. Once you exit, you'll find the beautiful land of Skyloft, which will basically be our hub world for the game. Think of it as your, I guess, Outset Island or Kokiri Forest, an area that you'll periodically return to. Maybe your Temple of Time, I guess. Now, just be very careful, sneak past him, and keep going to your right against the wall. Oh, he spotted us. So yes, this is Instructor Owlin. Instructor Owlin will basically tell you about all of the more advanced movement features of this game. So first thing he's going to tell you is that using the Z button can operate the camera, like I also explained. But he also tells you about Z targeting. Z targeting will allow you to target any specific object, especially ones that you can interact with, and no matter what, you will always focus in on the object. This is especially nice for combat, and it's been around since Ocarina of Time, making combat incredibly easy. Or at least incredibly easier compared to, say, you know, the freeform combat of something like Link to the Past or the original Legend of Zelda, so it's definitely a nice addition. You can also talk to people from very far away, as long as you're able to get them in your Z button range. And occasionally you are going to lock onto things you don't want to with the Z button, which becomes very annoying, in which case just tap the Z button again to stop talking to whatever you're looking at. Now afterwards, he'll also point over to these boxes. Somehow he has the power to control your field of vision. Once you pan over to these boxes, he'll basically explain that you can use awesome parkour moves to get up here. This is a new feature in Zelda Skyward Sword. Link is much more agile, which will actually allow you to traverse the land very differently, and it'll also give you a lot more opportunities to, say, climb things. It's very nice because it gives you a new idea of how to explore. It's not hugely different, but it's different enough that I think it's worth mentioning. Afterwards, he'll basically say if you go over to a ledge, you'll automatically jump, which is kind of a weird thing to say because, you know, whenever I go to a ledge, I usually just fall down if I don't keep running at it. Nonetheless, Link has the ability to automatically jump across ledges. As he calls this, it's the auto jump. It's about the most obvious name he could come up with, but nonetheless, we'll accept it. Now, you can also talk to him again, or completely ignore him. I, for the sake of this walkthrough, am talking to him again, and also, it does alter some dialogue later on in the game. For the worse, if I may be honest, but it does alter some dialogue a little bit further into the game. He'll basically tell you that Headmaster Gapora, the guy that you're going to see, well, the guy you're going to see in about a moment, has a pet named Mia, and I'm assuming that she's actually going to a cabin in the woods to get over her narcotics addiction. Nonetheless, you have to go and rescue Mia from her cabin in the woods before all the Deadites decide to take her over. So, actually, that's not very far from the truth, if I may be honest, but we'll get to that later. What you're going to do is you're going to need to use a bit more agility to get across to Mia. So he's basically going to teach you a few new things, like climbing and climbing up ivy. The climbing mechanic in this game doesn't really change a whole lot. Link has been able to do some of these things since, I want to say, Wind Waker, where he was able to slide along walls and also hang off of ledges and traverse them. And since Twilight Princess and even Ocarina of Time, you've been able to climb things like ivy. But in Skyward Sword, they also added a leap function, where you shake the Wii Remote to one side and you'll be able to leap that way. It's very convenient and it'll allow you to speed up real nice and good, but unfortunately it's not particularly useful on that corner because it's all jagged and you'll just kind of hit the edge of the ledge and just kind of stop. Now, no matter what, you're never going to be able to get up here, so he's going to have to teach you a new thing. Pushing boxes, a foreign mechanic never seen in any game. Resident Evil, all of them. Basically, you'll need to push boxes to get some leverage occasionally. which you might recognize from lots of other games. I use the example Resident Evil because, well, I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, and that's usually the game that comes to mind when I talk about box pushing. But there's quite a few other ones, I'm sure. Basically, you can move these boxes different ways. For example, I'm only pushing this box, but you can pull them any direction and manipulate them however you want. Also, climbing up boxes is different in this game. You can either run at it for several seconds, or use your dash and parkour moves to get up the box. So that's kind of nice. So anyway, now that you found Mia, this adorable little thing over here, you can actually pick her up, and you're going to want to take her down to Instructor Horwell. But here's the thing. If you take her over the ledge and try and throw her, Instructor Horwell gets pretty pissed off at you. It's actually quite entertaining, but it doesn't really affect anything. Now, make sure you jump through these arches over here, because in a previous recording, I actually jumped off the ledge, and I had to get her back up there whilst also throwing her everywhere, so that was a little bit difficult, and I had to really inch my way up this whole platform. It wasn't very fun, I will admit that. So, that whole thing is completely unnecessary. If you want to learn some of the newer mechanics of the game, you totally can. But if this is a second playthrough, for example, or maybe if you've seen, a handsome, devilish young man walk you through the game before and you already know the mechanics, you can just completely ignore him. It's really not that important. I just decided to do it for the sake of the walkthrough. Now, if you dash all the way over here, you'll see a green fruit, and picking it up reveals that it is a stamina fruit. These things will actually fill up your stamina meter, which actually baffles me a little bit, because you just have to wonder if they're going to place fruits periodically all around the area, why don't they just have a larger stamina meter, instead of having to program these extra items into the game every 5 seconds? Nonetheless, I can see why, because they don't want you dashing all over the place, and occasionally you're going to have to slow down, so I understand, but I don't like it. Afterwards, you can talk to Elvis Presley over here, and he'll basically explain to you how to save your game. Unlike other Zelda games where you just go into the menu and press save, you're actually going to have to save at save points. This is a bit annoying to some players because a lot of them do like to save their progress every 5 seconds, and unfortunately, it's kind of an outdated system as well. You know, back in the day when we had battery backups, you basically didn't have the option of saving anywhere, but since the N64 Zelda games, you just went at the menu, pressed the B button, and you were able to save automatically. It kind of reminds me of something like the notepad or ink ribbon system from Silent Hill or Resident Evil, where it's just these arbitrary save points, and they're either really, really close to each other or very, very far away. And that tends to be the big issue with this game. So, go over here and meet Zelda. What, you didn't think it would be peaceful the whole way through? Come on, guys, this is a video game! Let's get some action going here. Yeah, it's not exactly saving the world or preventing the heat death of the universe, but I guess it's nice enough. Anyway, if you talk to Zelda, she'll also give you some slight information, but not a whole lot. Yeah, Zelda's kind of not interested in helping us out right now. She'd much rather push us off things. Anyway, if you go back down here and speak to Elvis Presley, he'll give you some rather interesting information. It's not necessary to do it, since you pretty much just explore for about 5 seconds and you'll actually figure out where you're supposed to go. But if you are somehow lost between this area and the next area, you can always speak to him. He'll mention a character named Groose has won off in the morning with your Loftwing, or at the very least he was doing something suspicious and he's probably the suspect. Spoiler alert, he totally is. So, yeah, he basically tells you that they're over at the plaza in the center of the town, which is not actually correct because it's basically at the far south of the town. Nonetheless, you can also talk to Instructor Horwell over here, and he'll say one of the worst jokes I have ever read in any game ever. What? Your Loftwing is missing? How strange. Do you think you could go get him? You know, your flying in the ceremony hinges on whether or not you find him. God, I'm a piece of shit. Yeah, it's kind of an entertaining joke, but I think you actually don't get it if you don't do your little tutorial. He'll basically just berate you on the fact that you never listen to instructions and don't respect your elders. So I'd much rather have that terrible joke as opposed to having to listen to him complain about how back in my day we respected our elders, or whatever it is that he actually says there. Yeah, so essentially all you gotta do is tell him that the instructor wants to meet him. In fact, I'm pretty sure you can just ignore him completely and it won't actually affect the game at all. But it is interesting to talk to him. Now, over here, you'll see this little kid who I swear looks like the love child of Satan. But nonetheless, this kid's rolling into a tree. I assume it's part of some sort of ritual to bring Beelzebub back from the dead. He's basically going to tell you you have to roll into the tree. So, if you do so by running and shaking the nunchuck at the last second, you'll eventually roll into the tree, shaking loose a sky stag beetle. Alongside that, 5 rupees. Again, not exactly a huge deal, but if you just try and run past him, he'll actually stop you to explain how you roll, so that's kind of disappointing. I just recommend you get out of the way immediately. If you also talk to him, he'll mention how his sky stag beetle got away from him, and that he'd need a bug net to catch him. I don't know why he didn't use his demonic black magic powers, but nonetheless, I'm assuming that he's just trying to blend in with us humans. Now you can roll into more trees and go ahead and get some extra rupees, which I don't think is necessary, but I like to have as many rupees as possible this early in the game, because unlike a lot of other Zelda games, this one does involve quite a bit of spending rupees. So anyway, you're going to want to head all the way down to this plaza over here. So that's it for episode 1. Join me in the next episode when I confront the troublemakers.